All right, we are back. It's the New York Giants Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. My name is Jay Berman. The Giants have 2 games left. Mercifully, 2 games left.
I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants, and it's the Tank Bowl. Who's going to get the number one pick this weekend?
I'm Mark Collins, two-time Super Bowl champion. Well, at least the guys are still competing.
Let's go, Big Blue. It's the New York Giants squad. Everything New York Giants every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the G-Men. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. The Giants Squad Show starts now.
All right, we are back alongside Patricia and Mark. My name is Jay. As we said, it's the New York Giants Squad Show. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. As we said, 2 games to go. Mercifully, Patricia, right, exactly. Thank the good Lord there's only 2 games to go. Before we move forward with the Raiders, let's talk about the Vikings. Questionable offensive game plan, to say the least, Patricia.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because some people thought that maybe this was the Giants' attempt to protect Jackson Dart. I don't know that. I mean, I could see that argument, but, look, Jackson Dart's going to have to face tough defenses in his career. And, might as well cut your teeth. Why delay the inevitable, So, I guess looking at the matchups, which we did last week, I remember saying that the Vikings run defense wasn't nearly as good as their pass defense. And I thought maybe that might be the strategy that Mike Kafka might put in play, which is what he ended up doing. But, now you've got this narrative that they were trying to protect Jackson Dart from, being put in a blender, which he was anyway, because he had one of his worst games. But, how else do you learn if you don't, go out there and actually face this in real time?
The scheme, we talked about it last week, guys. I was talking about, they just take more snaps from under center to take that defense out of play, keep the defense honest. With the play action and the run, stuff like that. And they did that effectively. I don't know why they changed middle of the second quarter, definitely the second half. They went to the shotgun and tried to run the ball from the gun position. The running back is always 6-7 yards behind the center. The quarterback is sitting at 5 yards. You got to make up that time to try to get to gain yards. I like the overall scheme at first on offense because they were moving the ball effectively with running the ball, and they changed. As far as, and I don't know if that's protecting Jackson Dart for change the whole scheme in the second half. I don't know. That's kind of stupid if they did. It really lost him the game. But you're right, Patricia. He's got to play no matter what. I mean, you're 2-12. You're not going anywhere. You might as well just play the guy. He's got to learn. With the bad comes the good, and with the good comes the bad. You're going to have to learn. This is part of the learning process.
It's really interesting because, as we said, 7 completions for 33 yards, Patricia, is as bad as it gets. I mean, especially in a game that didn't really have any weather. It's interesting that they have that perspective as far as trying to protect Dart, or at least allowing that, as you said, narrative to enter into play. It's really weird moving forward now, expecting – I don't know what from Dart. I don't know how he's going to play, if he's able to take a hit, if he wants to take a hit, if they're letting him take a hit. Patricia, it's all really confusing.
It actually is. And what's even scarier is it was 13 net passing yards. When you factor in all the
Right.
sacks and everything like that. That's what's even scarier. But it's been kind of confusing if you think about it. And I made this point on my podcast, today's episode. The Giants, if you look at how they've handled Jackson Dart, they waited until week 4 when they had a healthy Andrew Thomas back full time. Then, Kafka comes in and they reduce the design runs. I mean, it's almost like, I don't want to say that they're babying him, because I don't think that's what they're intending to do, but that's how it kind of comes off. And now they put forth this conservative run first plan, and they, it almost reminded me a little bit of the Tommy DeVito plan against the Jets when DeVito had to go into the game ice cold, and it's like they didn't trust him to throw the ball. And I don't believe that's what Kafka was trying to get at. I'm just not sure what they're trying to do with Jackson Dart. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, let the kid play. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have bad games. He's going to have great games, but you can't, tether him, if you will, or tie his hands back and say, well, it has to be this, this, and this, because you're not going to have perfect scenarios every single week. You're going to be missing offensive linemen. You're going to be missing your top playmakers. You've got to play through all that. And I just feel like they've got to, that they haven't really, gone down that path.
Go ahead, Mark.
As bad as the offense played, and I always think stats, at some point stats do lie. As bad as they played on offense, they still had a chance to win. The game was still close. If they would have stuck to the game plan that they had in the first half, taking the plays on the center, play action pass, that kind of stuff, things would have changed. And defensively, we will talk about that later, what I expect of defense, but I digress. As bad as they played and as bad as Jackson Dart looked, they were still in the game. It was a close game. And I know Brian Flores is a defensive guru. I get it. But I don't think his defense really did that much to confuse the Giants' offense. Now, what it did do was confuse that offensive line, because that was a makeshift offensive line. They couldn't pick up a lot of line stunts and some of the blitzes. That I get. And that came in the second half when they went to the gun instead of taking the ball from under center. And when you do stuff like that, that makes the Brian Flores defense against the Giants look more effective. But they were still in the game.
Patricia, that being all said, why can't the Giants win? I mean, and to be fair, perhaps it's an indictment of the Vikings that the Giants still had a chance to win, but why can't they win? I mean, it's a difficult question, but still one we need to address.
They make mistakes that hurt themselves, and they're not good enough to overcome the mistakes. I mean, they had that neutral zone infraction by Abdul Carter that took a touchdown return off of, I think it was a fumble off the board. I mean, the penalties, having third and long, going from third and short to third and long. I mean, I've said it all year long. They are not good enough to overcome the mistakes they make, and they make a lot of mistakes. Some of them are discipline related. Some of them are just by chance. The drop passes. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, Theo Johnson, if you get your hands on the ball, you got to catch it. That's your job. I don't care if it's not in the numbers, you've got to catch that ball. And Theo Johnson had that ball go off his hands, and it was picked off. And then Darius Slayton has had just an awful year this year, which is kind of surprising. I mean, for him to drop that big gain that would have gone for at least 20 yards, I mean, my gosh. So this is why these little things all add up, and this is why this team just can't seem to get out of its own way.
Yeah, Mark, it is uncanny how they find every single way, every single week to lose a game.
When you have the stench of collapsing in that locker room and in the organization, from what I've seen over the last 10 plus years or whatever, it's there. You can smell it. You can feel it. You got to get rid of that somehow. So these players are in that funk, and they know they look how they lost the whole year, the games. They're up by 14. They lose by 17. They're in a game. They get blown out. Offsides penalties, drop balls. They expect it to happen because that stench of that feeling and that smell is still there. And fortunately, there's 2 games left in this season, so we could get somebody in there to fumigate that stench out of there and change that whole situation. The Abdul Carter line up in the neutral zone. Does that happen? Yes. But as Patricia even said, it's just inopportune times that it happens. You get a pick 6, and it's called back. That happens. Unfortunately, it happened to the Giants more this year than I've seen any other team happen to, even with the Giants in years. But it happens. The drop passes, that's been happening all flipping year. That's inexcusable. That's discipline. That's attitude. And then when stuff like that happens, the first thing it resonates from the players to the fans to the organization to the front office. Uh-oh, here it comes. Oh, here it comes. They go in the tank. And again, they win in the tank. One of the many bright spots I saw after that when Abdul Carter was offsides and they ran for, who was it? Holland ran for the pick six. He had it. I think it was, one of the safeties ran it back for a pick six. He came back and gave Abdul Carter a hug. Like, hey man, it's okay. Let's keep going. I like that. That shows leadership. That shows accountability, and Abdul owned up to it. The next play, he was in on a tackle for a loss, and they gave up 3 points. Yeah, they lost 4-7, then 4, whatever. They lost the points, but that showed me something that the guys are still in it. They're still trying, and there's some sort of leadership there, just not to the point where it should have been from day one.
Yeah, it's interesting how things have just sort of crumbled, despite the fact that there is this, whether we like it or not, narrative about Jackson Dart. Patricia, should he play the last 2 games?
I think he should. I mean, I could see the argument for not playing him, and I presented that argument on today's Locked On Giants. But me personally, you play him. He needs the experience, and you can't sit and be afraid. Oh my gosh, he's going to get hurt. You can't go that way. I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Nobody's going to, you can't stop it. But, get this kid as much experience as he can, in whatever time you have left this season, and let him build on that, so that this way, when a new head coach comes in next year, they can look at the tape together. They have a nice sample size that they can look at and say, okay, you did this well, you didn't do this well, we need to work on this. And this way you can formulate a plan, because remember, with a new coaching staff, they're going to get to start their offseason program a couple weeks earlier than the rest of the team the rest of the teams that don't have a new coaching staff. So I'm in favor of playing Jackson Dart. But again, I made presented both sides of the argument, why you wouldn't want to play him versus why you would. I would.
I agree, Mark. All yours.
When I taught my kids to drive, I just didn't teach them to drive when the weather was good. You know what I mean? When you get snow, you get rain, you get whatever, you take them out to get the experience to drive. Because if you drive only in good weather, they just know how to function in good weather. It's the same correlation with Jackson Dart. You can't just let him go out there and just, play him when it's good for him to play, he's got to play. He's got to learn in all situations. This is the best time for him to play, because this is probably, hopefully, as bad as it gets for him as a quarterback with the Giants. I think this is, you're 2 and whatever, and you're 2 in Topeka. You're not going anywhere. Soak it in, learn from this, because when you learn from when it gets as bad as it can, when it gets good, you know how to handle everything. If it goes bad again, you know how to navigate through it. So he's got to play. And besides, why would anybody think about benching this kid? He's not Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. He hasn't done anything yet. So he's got to play. You got to take your lumps, because you're the captain, you're the quarterback of the New York Giants. That C's on your chest for something, so you got to roll with it, because everybody's looking at you when the team does bad. When the team does good, they're going to look at you. So you got to ride this thing out. So, yeah, he's going to play.
All right, we'll take our first quick break of the show. When we return, Brian Burns awarded with a Pro Bowl selection, rightfully so. We'll do all that next. All right, let's tell you about Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least two players' stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Mahomes and Steph Curry. Then we'll see how my predictions play out. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, we're back. And as we said, a little bit of good amongst all the bad. Patricia, Brian Burns, a selection to the Pro Bowl we knew was going to happen. He really has been an amazing giant this year, for lack of a better term.
He has been amazing indeed. This is a man, talk about a great trade that the Giants have made. A lot of times trades, you're a little suspect, are they going to work out? Brian Burns has been worth every single penny, every single asset that they gave up to get him. The man plays hurt. He doesn't want to come out. He wants to be on the field for every snap. I don't think he's been on I could be wrong. I don't think he's been on the injury report this year, if I'm not mistaken. He's just been phenomenal, and he's been a leader in the locker room, and he goes about it in a way that, is truly a professional. You got some guys that beat their chests thinking that, they're all that and everything. Brian Burns just goes about his business, does what he has to do. He leads in his own way, and his teammates respect him. And I could not be happier for that guy, because I know the losing is killing him. It's as it is, anybody in that locker room. But Brian Burns in particular, because week in and week out, that man is putting himself on the line with nothing to show for it, but yet he still does it because he's a professional.
One Giant made All-Pro. Because on losing teams, usually nobody goes All-Pro, but Brian Burns had a great season. And, I think the Giants have got a good return on their investment. He's been lights out. And the only one on that team has been consistent from week 1 to now. The consistency is there. There's no drop-off. There's no missing. No, he's there. Solid. So he deserves it, and congratulations.
All right, let's talk about Andrew Thomas, who I guess was snubbed. He's had a pretty good year. Anytime an offensive lineman doesn't get mentioned much, I guess that's a good thing. But was he snubbed? He's never made the Pro Bowl before, Patricia.
Yeah, he hasn't. And there was that one season, I think it was it his second season, that he really turned it around, and he should have made it. I think he was second team All-Pro that year. But look, I kind of understand why maybe Andrew Thomas didn't get it this year. And by the way, he finished in the top 10 of the fan vote, finally. For every week I was like, where is Andrew Thomas? Why is he not in the top 10? He finished at number 10 in the fan vote. But I'm wondering if perhaps the reason why he didn't get placed a little higher was because he did miss, the first couple of games as he was, finishing up his rehab on that Frank surgery that he had. Maybe that was it. It could be any number of things, but Andrew Thomas has played really, really well. That offensive line has played really, really well, especially with Andrew Thomas in there, which is why I'm kind of curious to see how they do the rest of these last two games, because I don't think Andrew's going to play with that hamstring injury. So I don't know. Was I expecting Andrew Thomas to be a Pro Bowler? I thought it was iffy, but I thought he would have at least placed higher in the fan vote, and it is what it is.
Mark, if Burns was the best defensive player, perhaps the best Giant this year, Andrew Thomas was close, especially on offense.
Yeah, but and I know the Pro Bowl voting has changed since when I played. I never put much solace in the Pro Bowl, but you got to understand something. As now they have fan voting, you would think, being from the New York area, people are going to vote him in. Nobody is going to vote. Losing teams don't get a bunch of Pro Bowl players. That's it. That's fact. It don't happen. I don't give a damn how good he played or whatever. Man, look, you're 2-12, 2-13, that's the first thing people look at. What's his record? What's his record? Oh, and they go, their whole roster look up, okay, well, Burns is the only one on this whole team who's worth a damn. And that's why he made it. Because they see what goes on. Offensive lineman, I'm not saying Andrew Thomas is a bad offensive lineman, but that offense has been struggling. That's what they look at. Fans going to vote just because he's a Giant. Cool, whatever. But when players vote, they're looking at, you know what, that team is, they doing whatever. So, listen, I've been snubbed many times too, and I was on winning teams. But when you got a bunch of Giants, Taylor and Banks and Pepper, you're going to get snubbed. Cool, I'm with it. I was more concerned with Super Bowl rings than a Pro Bowl watch. That's my thing. But in this totality, the Giants, if they had 4, 5, 6, 7 Pro Bowl players, they would have won more than just 2 games. That's how generally it's looked at. And it's not that he's a bad player. He's not. It's just, well, your record says who you are. Unfortunately, that's how it works into the votings right now. Now, All-Pro is totally different. He'll make All-Pro, I bet, because that's basically done by sports writers and media people. But the Pro Bowl is a whole different deal.
All right, Patricia, do you think, because Abdul Carter's really turned it on, how much credit do you give to Burns taking this guy under his wing, telling him all the mistakes he made are wrong, and then getting him to play well? Can we give credit to Burns there?
I think you can give a little. I mean, look, there are guys that talk a great game, but who at the end of the day aren't, their play doesn't match what comes out of their mouth. And then you've got guys who don't talk a lot, but who set the example with their actions. Brian Burns is somewhere in the middle. He talks, he talks when he needs to, and he backs it up with his play. And, if you're a young defender, a young edge rusher, who better to look up to than Brian Burns?
Yeah, Abdul Carter has been great, as you said, Mark. That should be a guy that Carter looks to, Brian Burns, and says, that's what I want to be like.
You would think so, but it wasn't the case. Because if it was, it would have been happening day one, right? Now, there are some guys who Burns say, "Come here, young fella, let's go to dinner. Let's go have a beer. Let's talk," and start talking to him. Cool. I don't think that happened. Based on what I've seen so far and what I'm hearing happened earlier with Abdul Carter, that hasn't happened. So, you can only be a leader. I mean, you can only engage with a player who wants that kind of leadership. If I'm a best corner, right, and the guy comes in and, if I was kind of standoffish and didn't want to take him under my wing, well, I just lead by actions and just follow me when you want to follow me. Well, sometimes you gotta say, dude, come on, let's go. I can tell you stories, but I want to bore you. But, I just think Abdul Carter maybe finally, based on this game and the game before, has said, you know what, I really effed up. I should own up to my mistakes. And I should look at Burns or whoever in leadership and follow that. Sometimes it takes, my mom used to always say this, a hard head makes a soft ass, which means when you're hard-headed, you're going to stumble and bubble and bubble, and you're going to fall on your ass until you get tired of that and then you start listening. And maybe Abdul Carter's starting to listen, and maybe it'll catapult him to be potentially, hopefully, a great player.
It's a perfect segue into a note that Patricia wrote down before we started, and that's future Pro Bowlers. I would assume that he's on the list of guys we think could make a Pro Bowl in the near future, but perhaps some other guys that we aren't sure of. Patricia, your thoughts on some future Pro Bowlers?
Yeah, I think with Abdul Carter, part of the, just before we move on to the topic, they've also been using him more as a, over center. They've been letting him up over to zero a lot, which I think has made a difference. So, I mean, Abdul Carter, I think, has that potential to be a future Pro Bowler if he can stay focused and not, let up on his effort, which I think was a big problem earlier in the year. As far as future Pro Bowlers, I mean, I don't know if we can count Malik Neighbors when he comes back since he's already been a Pro Bowler, but certainly that's somebody we have to include in the conversation. Can Jackson Dart reach that level? I don't see why not if he, continues to go on the upswing, but he's going to need a really, really good offensive coordinator who's going to be able to get the best out of him while also not running him into the ground. So that's somebody you can keep an eye on. And, I'm just thinking in terms of the offensive line. I mean, Andrew Thomas, if he can stay healthy, he's got to be in the discussion, I think. I mean, time's running out with him. I get it. He's getting up there in age. He's had a bunch of injuries, but when he's out there, he's really, really good. I mean, for a while there, he was like a top 3 left tackle in the league. So, you can talk about Dexter. Obviously, Dexter has been a Pro Bowler this year, not so much so because of that elbow that he's been dealing with all year long. So, the Giants, they've got they talk about the young core that they have. Abdul Carter is one. I think Jackson Dart's one that can eventually maybe push for a Pro Bowl, but they've got to get some more seasoning. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a couple of years. I mean, it took Eli Manning a few years before he became a Pro Bowler, and who knows, maybe Jackson Dart, it'll take him less time. Maybe it'll take him more time, but maybe he represents the best chance on offense.
Yeah, Mark, for the incumbents, obviously there's going to be a big change in player personnel next year. But who are some future Pro Bowlers? Who are some guys you think that will, one, be on the team in the future, and two, prosper?
Honestly, Jay and Patricia, I don't put that much emphasis on future Pro Bowlers. Give me some guys who are very, very good and can play. As far as the Pro Bowl stuff, that's all that stuff to me is smoke and mirrors. It's just who likes you. It's just that's me. I don't give a damn about that. Who's ever there was Cordell Flott, Andrew Thomas, Abdul Carter. Show me consistency. Be the best on your damn team first. Okay? Be in the house of very, very good. Be in the arena of all Giants team or whatever, all NFC. Cool. I don't give a damn about the Pro Bowl. Just play. Play consistently. Play within the confines of the team, offense and defense. Show me some consistency week in, week out. Catch the damn ball when it's thrown to you. That's all I want. I don't want outside, I'm going to be a Pro Bowler. I'm a Pro Bowler. That don't mean squat. You can be Pro Bowl one year and piece of crap the next year. Look at Dexter Lawrence, right? It don't matter. Give me consistency. Give me something that my fan base could say, you know what? That kid over there, I can rely on every day, every week. He's going to be there, boom, boom, boom. That's what I play for. That's what I want. So not trying to squash the conversation about who's the next Pro Bowler, because I don't give a damn. But some people do. I don't. Show me consistency on the team you're playing on, and we'll go from there.
All right, maybe there's some future Pro Bowlers not on the Giants right now that will be next year. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Break number 2 coming up. Real quick break, about 10 seconds. Then we'll do injuries, the futures of Shannon Kafka, and obviously early coaching rumors. We'll do it all next. All right, we're back. Patricia, Mark, and Jay, and obviously Andrew Thomas, a big topic of conversation. Patricia limped off in the second quarter because of that hammy. What's the latest?
Yeah, so the hamstring is to the opposite leg that he injured, if you remember, I think it was a couple of years ago. My guess, and we have not seen the injury report as of this recording, um, but my guess is we will not see Andrew Thomas this weekend. They will not put him out there and risk making that injury worse. Hamstrings are very, very tricky. And I don't know the degree of the strain. It could be a 1, it could be a 3. I don't know. But why go out there and risk making it worse? Now, maybe it's mild and maybe he goes out there, but they are so tricky. You could think that you feel great and then you go out there and then boom, it triggers up again. And it's like, do you want to take that chance given that there's really nothing here for Andrew Thomas to prove any further? I think, unlike a rookie, if he were a rookie, maybe you'd say, well, maybe you push him, but what is there to prove at this point?
Yeah, Mark, you can't push him here. I would be surprised if he played.
No, I would be too. There's no need for him to play. I mean, yeah, hammies are tough because you can feel good, like Patricia said, and you got to jogging around. All of a sudden, one little twitch, one little push, and you're pulling that thing. It gets worse. So I don't see the reason for him to play, other than if he wants to play. Now I think he earned that right to have that thrown in there. But I think the Giants will shut him down.
Yeah, they will most likely do that. John Michael Schmitz has a right hand, Cordell Flott a knee injury. So obviously, anybody close, Patricia, I'm assuming they're not going to play.
I don't think so. I mean, with Schmitz, you mentioned the right hand. I believe that's the hand he snaps the ball with. And if I remember correctly, he had a splint on that right hand, and particularly the index finger, which I guess you can snap the ball without your index finger, but what about pushing and doing all the things you have to do in the pit? I mean, I don't know if you want to risk that if that finger is indeed broken. As far as Cordell Flott, I kind of got the impression that maybe that knee is something to keep an eye on, which would really stink because Cordell Flott's going to hit free agency after this season, and he's played really well this year. He has really played well, but again, don't push him. If that knee is if you can avoid surgery for that knee, if it's just a sprain, let him heal up. The season's basically lost, and I get it. The Giants don't feel that it's lost. They're going to play 1-0 every week until there are no more games. I get that, but you also got to be smart for the long term with some of these guys.
Mark, I have to imagine that guys don't want to spend 6 months of their off season rehabbing, from an injury that probably meant nothing. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair. I mean, if you're hurt, even slightly hurt, you don't want to further the damage by going and playing in a game that's meaningless, right? Yeah. So some of the guys they don't want that, and a lot of guys don't want to go to rehab. Especially if you live in Florida and California, back to Jersey, New York to rehab. So it's a conscious effort not doing that. But it's on the team's call to whether play or not, and whether you want to play or can play. So no, if Cordell Flott cannot play, you want to risk injuries. And if the Giants think that's a player they want to bring back, next year, they're going to keep him on the side. And I don't know how severe the injury is to his knee, but if it's that bad and he needs surgery, they'll shut him down. They'll shut him down, period, and reassess at the end of the season.
All right. Obviously, these are decisions that guys like Shane and Kafka have to make. Kafka over the next 2 weeks. Who knows about Shane? But let's transition into the futures of both of these guys. We'll start with Kafka. I would be surprised if anybody thought, Patricia, that he was coming back.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, look, the bottom line is the results haven't been there. You can talk about the fiery speeches. I mean, we all saw the clip from Hard Knocks of Kafka dropping the F-bombs left and right. Big whoop. What did he get them? It hasn't gotten them a win yet. So, that's the bottom line. And, you could question how he's handled Jackson Dart. Has he taken some of the stinger away from Jackson Dart? You can question a whole bunch of things. I don't think Kafka's coming back. I mean, the sad reality, I think, is that Kafka is still kind of viewed as an extension of Brian Dable. And at this point, the whole coaching staff, except for Carmen Brasil, the offensive line coach, and Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach, the whole coaching staff has got to go, except for those two guys, in my opinion.
Mark, the future of Kafka before we get to Shane. Your thoughts?
Oh, I said it a long time ago. He's just sitting there, keeping the seat warm for the next coach. That's all. He's got to go. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed, and firing Brian Cox because of stupid stuff and the fiery speeches is not working. Same results. He doesn't have control or command of the locker room. Some of the play calling, you're right, Patricia, just extension of Brian Dable. There's nothing's changed. He may have knocked maybe 10 minutes off practice or whatever. It's the same result. So, as I said, it's time to fumigate that whole locker room.
Patricia, I cannot believe, and maybe things were different when they fired Dable, but I would be surprised if Shane returns as well. Your thoughts there?
I think he's on 50-50 ground, believe it or not. I mean, look, they have him doing the vetting process of the next head coach. He's putting together a list. He's probably putting out feelers to see who might be interested, who might not be. So he's doing the groundwork. But, you know, from my perspective, and I've said this before on this program, how do you separate him from Dable? They were brought in as a pair. They were both tasked, you know, John Mara was like, these are the two guys that are going to make the decisions regarding the future of this football franchise and the direction it goes. How do you hold Brian Dable accountable and fire him, but keep the other half, Joe Shane? Now they'll say, well, you know, we've got this good young core, but take a deep look into the good young core that they have. Has that young core really been, have they optimized it? Has that young, I mean, I hate to say it, Deonte Banks has regressed badly. I mean, Theo Johnson has a dropsies problem. The contract that they gave to Darius Slayton hasn't paid off. I mean, you can go down the list. Evan Neal, who can't get on the field, who they basically gave up on. Why did they keep him? I have no idea. Jalen Hyatt. I can go on and on and on about this quote unquote good young core. What have they gotten out of it? Very little from what I see.
Mark, does he survive?
No, hell no, he shouldn't. You have a captain of a ship, and he rams the ship onto a dock, right? And then they fire the cook on the ship, but the captain keeps command of the ship. That's some dumb stuff. That's what they'll do if they keep him. He wrecked it. It's his fault. You can't fire the chef on the ship, which was Dable. You can't do that. It makes no sense. His track record proved what he has done over the years he's been there. And it's not very good. Granted, there are a few bright spots, player-wise. But the totality of it, it's not very good. So you can't. They came in together. They should leave together. We got to, unfortunately, you're going to have to start this whole process over again. And we'll see where it goes.
And to that end, if I could just add one more thing real quick. People say, well, look at what happened with George Young. George Young struggled in his first few years. Yeah, but George Young had everybody going on the upswing while he put the pieces in place. And look at how good those teams in the 1980s were under George Young. So under Shane, unfortunately, the Giants have gone in the opposite direction. They've gone from being, you know, a playoff team down to being a 2-win team, which is what it looks like they're going to finish as.
All right, so that all transitions into early coaching rumors. Now, Marcus Freeman's not new, Mark, but perhaps John Harbaugh would be available, or even Mike Tomlin. We've been talking about Tomlin forever. But Mark, Freeman, Harbaugh, and Tomlin, that's a pretty good trio to choose from if those guys become available.
Yeah, I would go with Tomlin, Harbaugh, then Freeman. That's what I would do. Now, if the first two are I'm just, God dang it, that's a good one. I would I want somebody with history of building championship teams. Of course, Harbaugh and Tomlin has done that. Those would be my preferences. If all else fails, if you got to take Freeman, I like what he did at Notre Dame, like he's doing at Notre Dame. He brings that young element to the, he can really, was he 36, 37, wow, he's in his 30s. He brings that it factor. I don't know if he can handle that New York media, that pressure. That's my only concern with a guy like Marcus Freeman or any other college coach. That New York media, you guys know how it works. It's a lot of pressure, and it affects some players as well. Some players can't handle that heat. So I don't know, man. Give me the prior two, Harbaugh and Tomlin first, if they're available. Then if all else fails, I think Marcus Freeman may be the third choice.
Without getting too much into the weeds, Patricia, why are guys like Harbaugh and Tomlin even suggested to be available? I mean, they're great coaches.
Yeah, I don't think Tomlin's going to be available. I think, didn't they just clinch a playoffs berth, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken? I'd be shocked if Tomlin's available. Harbaugh, I think, kind of opened the door a little bit as to say, by saying he wasn't, not really addressing his future. So, could we see a situation like, several years ago when Andy Reid was let go of the Eagles and then he landed on his feet with the Chiefs? We could see that. And if Harbaugh became available, I'd move heaven and earth to get him, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Mark. Marcus Freeman is a very good head coach, but I think I would want somebody at the NFL level who has had experience building it up, because college is a little different than NFL. I mean, a lot different in a lot of ways. And no disrespect to Marcus Freeman. If he ever decides to become an NFL head coach, I think he'd do a fine job. But the Giants, how many times have they run with a guy who was untested, who had never done it before, and it hasn't worked? So now maybe it's time to rethink that strategy and go with somebody who has a proven pedigree. If they can't clone a Bill Parcells or a Tom Coughlin,
If Shane gets to make the decision, which, as Patricia said, at best 50-50, if Shane gets to make the decision, he has to swing for the fences, does he not, Mark?
Yeah, he has to. And if let's say if Harbaugh or Tomlin comes to the Giants and Shane is there, I'm sure those two coaches, they know how to build a championship team better than Shane, right? And they'll have more voice because we all know Shane has other people upstairs talking to him a lot, right? I'm pretty sure those two established coaches have some say-so in that as well. Marcus Freeman, not so much. He's got to kind of do what he's told from Shane and the people above Joe Shane. So that's why I say, and I know we all agree on this, a coach who's built on the pro level and won championships on the pro level is needed with the Giants. He has more voice of how to build a team, a championship team, or a team in general on the level. And Joe Shane has to listen to them. And the people above Joe Shane, some of the owners or percentage owners, have to do the same. These guys walk in with rings or ring or two. They've been there. They've done it. They will not be. You can't talk down to these guys. You could talk down to a Marcus Freeman or any other college coach who's never done it. You could talk down to them. But a guy like Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, different story.
All right, we have one more block to go. And of course, we have to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll do that all next, and we'll wrap things up after a quick 10-second break. All right, we're back. Patricia, Mark, and Jay. It's the number one pick bowl, Patricia. Obviously, the loser of this game, quite possibly, is the winner, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, isn't it sad that this is what we're talking about instead of talking about jockeying for playoff position? We're talking about who's going to get the number one pick. I mean, I get the notices every week from the NFL about the playoff scenarios. I don't even open them. I'm not even curious about them, But yeah, the loser of this game is going to be the winner because they're going to land up with the number one overall pick. And in a year where right now it looks like the quarterback class in the draft class is not the strongest, that's going to be a great position. If you have a need for a quarterback and it's the Giants, well, the Giants, assuming that they roll with Jackson Dart, which I believe they will, you can really help your franchise by trading that pick down and picking up, an extra first this year and picking up a boatload of picks. I mean, go back and look at that Eli Manning trade, what they were able to get, what the Chargers were able to get from the Giants. They got a boatload of picks. I would think this year, given that the quarterback class isn't as rich as it was back in 2004, if it's the Giants sitting in that number one spot and they trade down, they could probably do even better than what they did, than what they had to give up to get Eli Manning.
It's interesting. We've seen this before in the Chase Young Bowl, if you recall, with Washington late in that season that the Giants ultimately won, so they didn't get Chase Young. But that being said, sadly, Mark, we've seen this before when the fans want a loss. The players want to win, obviously, but the fans want a loss. Yeah,
the player's going to pay to win. But the Giants do lose. I agree with Patricia. You get the number one spot. And, Giants are set on with Jackson Dart. I agree with that. I would take that number one pick, and I'll call Miami. I'll call Arizona. I'll call who else? Any team that's looking for a quarterback to get up. Yeah, you can get a lot for that. But is there a big? Even if the Giants win, they go from 1 to maybe 3 or 4. You can get some good players still at 4, at 3. But based on the need of teams who need quarterbacks, you say that number one spot, you could do a lot of good things. You could trade that spot, you trade down, get that one spot that you trade with, you get a 2 or 3 from next year, or you could get a player on the team's roster. You can do a lot of stuff with that number one pick. So, and players are going to play to win. No player plays to lose for a draft pick because that player might not be on that team anyway. So that's how that goes. Even with the Giants, the coaching staff, they're playing for their jobs, which they're going to lose anyway, the jobs. So they're playing to win just to win. On the Raiders side, the Raiders are pretty well established with Pete Carroll. They're just going to go out there and do what they do, try to win like any other team will try to do. But as fans, and we gotta talk about this kind of stuff. It's not a position I never thought the Giants would be in after the beginning of the season, but here we are. So I hope they win, but then too, I hope they lose.
It'll be the first time I think since 1965 they've had the number one overall.
Oh gosh,
Castle Frederickson, I think, was the pick back then, if I'm not mistaken. But it's been a long time. But yeah, I mean, it can help them in the long term. So, but Mark's right. We talked to a couple players this week on the video calls, and they both, Adebo and Wan'Dale Robinson, and they both were like, I'm not thinking about the number one pick. I want to win. No player is going to say, oh, I'm going to tank because, why not? I'm going to help the team out. No, if they did, I'd want them off the team, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. No one does it. But it's good. The fans talk about it because that's what fans do. Yeah, they're not playing. They're not playing for a job. They're not playing for respect. So it's a whole different deal, And when I say I want them to lose, now I'm a novice to a point. Because I think that number one spot, Patricia, you know this, Jay, you know as well as I do, there's so much meat on that bone when you get that number one pick. You can go out and get so much food with that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's funny because Max Crosby went on a rant about being offended that he would even be asked about the number one pick. And that's exactly what we expect, especially from stud players, Patricia. They do not like that question.
No, and I don't blame him. If I were a player, I wouldn't like that question either. Because, it's an insult if you think about it. You're asking me to lose, me as a competitor, and you're compromising, the person's, reputation. So I don't blame them one bit for saying, don't bother me with that question. We're going out there and we're looking to win.
Yeah, and their livelihood, because everybody's about, well, tank because of you get the number one pick. That pick or that loss, or you think of players jockeying for position for the team, that draft pick or that whatever happens in that loss, it includes you. It includes the player. You're not guaranteed to be there. Whether you're Max Crosby or anybody else or Andrew Thomas, whoever, sometimes those picks, those trades, jockeying for spots, can include a player on that roster. It may include you. So why would you play down to lose a game? It makes no sense. So, but fans don't understand that part. And I'm the word fan is short for fanatic. And sometimes people do fanatical things, which are sometimes stupid in thought as well. So, no, the player's going to go out and play. They're going to do what they got to do. And hopefully, as I said before, the Giants just maybe slip on a banana peel going to the end zone and lose the game, so they get that number one pick so they could get more groceries to put into that basket.
Patricia, other than winning, obviously, because we know how the players feel, what are some goals or what is the objective the next 2 weeks for the players that play hard? It's an interesting situation, I guess, because they're so bad, yet they still have games to play.
Yeah, I think the number one goal is not to get hurt. That's got to be number one. Number two, some of those guys actually have contract incentives that they are chasing. Now, some of them have already gotten their incentives, Brian Burns being one. Russell Wilson has gotten a part of his incentives. So there are some guys that, with strong performances, they can reach those incentives. And, I talked about that a little bit on Locked On Giants yesterday. I'm going to do a fuller show once the season wraps, who made what incentives. But that's all, from a player perspective, if you've got an incentive to, 5 interceptions and you've got 4, you're going to be busting yourself to get that 5th one, to get that extra million or whatever it is you're owed in your contract.
Mark?
That is it. That's it. And you're playing for, hopefully, another coach who's watching the film, watching your hustle play, watching your stuff like that to make a team. That's basically it. But I've been in situations where we weren't going to the playoffs, and I want to reach those incentives. Extra 100,000 here. You make an all-pro team, which is out after the season. You want that extra bonus money as well. But more importantly, you want to finish your season strong. You want to finish healthy, and you want to go out, like you gave it your all. So that's what I expect from the Giants moving on, and any player in this position.
We played the game multiple times during the season, all the way back into late August and early September, about finding a win for the Giants. And we all circled, or at least one of the games we circled was the Raiders. So it's just funny how things have sort of fallen into our lap here, because we all expected them, or at least wanted to choose them to beat the Raiders. Yet now, Patricia, we want them to lose.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? I mean, I just want the season to end. It's been a long and exhausting, mentally draining season. People say to me, "Oh, how do you do it every week? How do you cover it?" It helps that you get a paycheck to do it.
Yeah.
Because, when people say, "Oh, I'm going to turn off the game," or "I'm going to do something else on a Sunday," there's a part of you that almost says, I envy you. But, look, it is what it is. You take the better for the worse. It's like a marriage, you take the good with the bad, I suppose, in this profession. But yeah, I mean, I just want to see a competitive game. I don't want to see a sloppy game. They're going up. This is going to be an interesting battle, I think, in terms of the Giants defense, the run defense in particular, and Ashton Gentry, 828 rushing yards, 703 yards after contact. Now, we all know that the Giants' run defense has been bad. They have missed tackles, taken poor angles. That's going to be an area that I would say keep an eye on, because if Gentry can run up against that Giants run defense, it's going to be a long, long evening.
It's funny, Mark. A couple of weeks ago, Brandon, when we were trying to find a win after a game, we circled the Raider game, and Brandon said Gentry was going to run all over the Giants. It's funny how now we're discussing that, how bad the run defense has been.
Yeah, I was watching the Raiders game last week, and he ran the ball effectively. He's starting to find his rhythm, and some of the Raider players are going, man, this guy's pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good, and I think he's going to run the ball effectively again against the Giants, because they proved they can't really stop anyone. Now, yeah, we talked about this game. We circled it week 3, 4, 5, whatever, as a win for the Giants. Not so sure now, because none of us expected the Giants to be in this position, nor any of us pulling for the other team for obvious reasons. But the Raiders, they're not world beaters, but then too, the Giants aren't the world. So, the Raiders are going to run the ball. Gentry's finding himself. He feels he can run the ball effectively against this Giants' porous run defense. Well, we're going to find out pretty soon Sunday, and I think the Raiders are going to win.
And then on the other side, you got Max Crosby going up against a potentially compromised Giants offensive line. I mean, Max Crosby has just been, a bright spot for the Raiders on defense. And if Andrew Thomas isn't in there, you don't think they're not going to line Max Crosby up against the rookie Marcus Bowe?
They're going to. And Max Crosby probably has some incentives to reach as well. So this might be an incentive game for him.
All right, for what it's worth, the Raiders are 1.5-point favorites. And again, this might be futile, Patricia, but just a few keys to the game as we wrap things up here.
Yeah, I mean, number one, stop Gentry, because when you look at his numbers and you see that 84.9% of his rushing yards is coming after contact, you got to wrap him up. You cannot let him, on first down run, and now all of a sudden it's second and short, third and short, and they can do what they want. Also get after Geno Smith. Geno Smith has not had exactly the best year since coming down to the Raiders. So get after him. And then on the Giants side, it's very simple. Don't make stupid mistakes. They've done it week after week. Those mistakes have come back and bitten them. They have cost them. You can't have drop passes. You can't have your hand lined up in the neutral zone, even if it's just, the tip of your index finger. Just play a fundamentally sound football game. The Giants have rarely done it this season. I think the last time you can make the case that they did it was back when they beat the Eagles, which seems like an eternity ago, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like a different season, Mark.
Yeah, it was a different season. Listen, the Giants just don't go to no casinos the night before the game because the season's over. Because I've heard people do that.
Yeah.
Don't go to no casinos. Don't hang out late. Stay healthy. Go play ball. Play as well as you can, and just get out of there injury free. That's all I ask.
All right, so that's a wrap. As we said, the Giants will play the Raiders in Las Vegas, 4:05 kick time. Again, 2 games to go. Dallas is on the other side at home. Who knows about that? But it should be a very interesting Raider-Giant game for the number 1 pick. For Patricia and Mark, I'm Jay. Merry Christmas to everyone, and we will see you Sunday after the game. So long.